When we talk about failure, most people treat it like a final chapter, as if the moment something breaks down, they believe they are broken too. But failure is not a verdict, it's a voice. It's trying to tell you something. And if you're willing to listen, if you're willing to stand in the discomfort long enough to hear the message inside it, you'll realize something extraordinary. Failure isn't here to stop you, it's here to shape you. It's feedback, it's data, it's direct. It's an invitation to rise in ways you couldn't have risen without it. Every time you fall short, every time your plan collapses, every time life throws you something that makes you question your strength, you're being shown the path toward who you need to become. Most people run from that message. They see failure as rejection, so they reject themselves. They think the world is saying, you're not enough, when in reality life is saying, you're being refined. There's a massive difference. Failure doesn't label you, it sharpens you. It exposes the places where your identity, your skills, your belief systems, your strategies still have room to grow. And that's the greatest gift you'll ever receive if you choose to see it that way. Think about every meaningful transformation in your life. Very few of them came from moments of comfort. Breakthroughs rarely come when everything is going right. Breakthroughs come when you're forced to confront what isn't working. They come when you hit that wall, and you have no choice but to become someone stronger than the wall. Failure brings those moments to the surface. It brings clarity. It brings honesty. It puts a spotlight on the gap between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. But here's where the magic happens. The moment you stop interpreting failure as the end and start seeing it as information, your entire emotional relationship with it transforms. Suddenly, instead of collapsing under disappointment, you start asking better questions. You start asking, what is this trying to teach me? What can I do better? What strength is this shaping inside me? That's the shift. That's the difference between staying stuck and rising. Because nothing holds you back more than the conclusions you make about yourself in moments of setback. When you understand that failure is feedback, you stop personalizing it. You stop saying, I failed, so I'm a failure. You begin to say, I failed, so now I know more. And that mindset turns every fall into a stepping stone. You're no longer avoiding difficulty. You're using it. You're studying it. You're getting stronger because of it. That's how achievers rise. Not by avoiding failure, but by mastering their meaning. There are people who go through their entire lives never reaching their true abilities, not because they didn't have the potential, but because they couldn't handle the discomfort of feedback. They wanted progress without pressure, evolution without exposure, reward without refinement. But life isn't wired that way. Life elevates those who are willing to endure the friction. And failure is simply the friction that strengthens the structure of who you are becoming. Some of you have been carrying a heavy fear of failing. You're scared to start something because you don't want to see yourself fall. But here's the irony. The longer you avoid action, the more you guarantee the very outcome you fear. What you resist, you reinforce. The only way to remove the fear of failure is to step into it. And once you do, you'll discover something unbelievably freeing. It wasn't as destructive as you imagined. In fact, it's constructive. It builds you. You were never supposed to do everything perfectly the first time. You were never meant to instantly know how to navigate every situation. You're meant to learn. You're meant to grow. You're meant to refine. And failure is simply the mechanism that life uses to speed up your evolution. It reveals the next step. It eliminates illusions. It teaches you what effort really looks like. It exposes the places where you've been holding back. It wakes up a strength you didn't realize you had. Have you ever noticed that the most confident people are the ones who have failed the most? That's because confidence doesn't come from succeeding. Confidence comes from surviving. Confidence comes from knowing that even when you fall flat, you get back up. That no matter what hits you, you adapt. That even if everything collapses around you, you're still capable of rising. Failure gives you that unshakable certainty. It builds resilience, and resilience becomes your foundation for everything else. But you can only access that if you accept that failure is not personal, it's purposeful. It's not blocking you, it's building you. It's not the end, it's the beginning of becoming someone you haven't met yet. When you stop running from that, when you step into it with curiosity instead of fear, everything inside you starts to expand. Your courage grows, your intelligence grows, your strategies grow, your emotional strength grows, And slowly, failure loses its power to intimidate you. It becomes something you expect, something you learn from, something you refine yourself through. Every great success story you've ever admired is built on a foundation of failures, repeated, painful, sometimes embarrassing failures. Here's what sets those people apart. They didn't see those failures as stop signs. They saw them as signals. They didn't take it as "I'm not meant for this." They took it as "I need to adjust." And because they kept interpreting failure as feedback, they kept rising. They kept evolving. They kept pushing until the feedback turned into forward motion. You have that same power. You have that same potential. You are one shift in perception away from turning your setbacks into strength. All it takes is choosing to interpret failure differently. Because the moment you stop seeing it as a judgment and start seeing it as guidance, everything changes. And when everything changes on the inside, everything eventually changes on the outside. There comes a moment in every person's journey where progress doesn't feel like progress doesn't feel like progress anymore. You push, you stretch, you show up, and yet nothing seems to shift. You wake up day after day with this quiet frustration building inside you, this whisper that says, "Oh, maybe this isn't meant for me. Maybe I'm not built for this." And the truth is, that moment, the moment when you're tempted to walk away, is the moment right before the breakthrough. It's the moment where most people quit. Not because they lack potential, but because they underestimate how close they really are. Persistence isn't glamorous. It's not exciting. It's not the part people celebrate. Persistence is waking up on the days when your motivation is gone, when your heart feels heavy, when the world doesn't give you even a single sign of progress, and choosing to move anyway. It's deciding to push forward even when life gives you every excuse to turn back. And that choice, made consistently, made when it's hardest, is what separates the people who get by from the people who break through. There is something powerful that happens inside you when you persist. Something shifts. You start to build a level of emotional and mental strength that no one can take from you. Persistence is not only about what you get, it's about who you become in the process. You become in the process. Because every time you decide to continue, even when you're tired or discouraged, you're reinforcing a truth within yourself. I am someone who does not stop. That identity becomes your foundation. It becomes the engine that drives you, especially when the road gets rough. Most people never get there because they're conditioned to look for immediate results. If they don't see progress fast enough, they assume they're failing. They assume they misjudged the path or the dream or their ability. But real growth doesn't show itself in the early chapters. It's invisible. It's happening in the roots before it ever appears in the branches. And because people can't see it, they convince themselves it's not happening. That's where persistence makes the difference. Persistence trusts the process even when the evidence isn't visible yet. Think about the moments in your life where you gave up too soon. You can probably feel that sting even now. And that's not because you were incapable. It's because you didn't wait long enough to see the reward. Every dream has a gestation period. Every goal requires a certain amount of friction, resistance, and pressure before it takes shape. That pressure is not there to break you. It's there to stretch you. Without resistance, you can't grow the strength that prepares you for the level you're reaching for. That's why your breakthrough is always on the other side of persistence. Not just because persistence gets you further, but because persistence changes you. It changes your capacity. It changes your hunger. It changes your perspective. You become someone who's not controlled by external circumstances, but guided by internal commitment. And once you reach that level, life opens pathways you couldn't see before. So many people think life is withholding opportunities from them, when the truth is that life is waiting for them to become the person who can handle what they're asking for. Persistence is the tool that does that. It builds emotional endurance. It builds mental sharpness. It builds discipline. It builds discipline. It builds the ability to keep going even without applause, even without validation, even without certainty. When you develop that muscle, your environment no longer determines your destiny. Your commitment does. But persistence isn't just about pushing harder. It's about pushing smarter. It's about learning from every attempt, adjusting, refining, and reapproaching with a deeper level of understanding. You don't persist by doing the same thing endlessly. You persist by evolving, by paying attention, by looking at what's not working and using it to sharpen your approach. That's how the impossible becomes possible. You don't conquer mountains by sprinting blindly. You conquer them by taking steady, intentional steps. There will be days when everything inside you says, a stop, enough. This is too hard. Those days are the defining ones. That internal resistance is not a sign to quit. It's a sign that you are on the edge of expansion. It's your old identity trying to hold on to what's familiar. It's the part of you that fears change because change requires discomfort. But if you push through that moment, if you take even one more step than your fear wants you to, you break the limitation. You break the pattern. You break the old version of yourself that's been holding you back. That is where breakthroughs live. Why? Not in the easy days, not in the early wins, but in the moments where you refuse to walk away, even when everything hurts. In those moments, you unlock a strength inside you that was always there, but never required until now. And once you tap into that strength, you become unstoppable. Look at anyone who has accomplished something meaningful. Any leader, any creator, any innovator, any dreamer who turned their vision into reality. None of them avoided struggle. None of them got it right immediately. All of them had moments where they questioned everything. But what made them different is that they kept going. Persistence was the quiet force behind every triumph they achieved. And here's the truth you need to remember. Your breakthrough is not going to announce itself before it comes. It's not going to send you a message saying, "Get ready, it's happening tomorrow." It's going to appear when you least expect it, right after the moment that felt unbearable. That's why quitting early is so tragic. You never know how close you actually were. Ah! Sometimes the treasure is one step past where you wanted to stop. Sometimes the reward is waiting just beyond the frustration. So when you feel yourself wanting to quit, pause, breathe, and remind yourself that this feeling, this exact moment, is the threshold. It's the doorway to the next level. The breakthrough is not out of reach. It's just on the other side of the fatigue, the frustration, the doubt. And the only thing separating you from it is persistence. Keep going because what's waiting for you is worth every step. There's a point in life where you realize that the world isn't shaping your destiny as much as the story you keep telling yourself is. The moments you fall, the moments you succeed, the moments where you hesitate or rise, it all comes back to the identity you carry inside. Because your identity is the lens through which you interpret every situation, every setback, every possibility. And that lens can narrow your life or expand it. It can break you or build you. It can convince you that failure is a sign to stop or remind you that failure is a signal to grow. Everything begins there. Most people don't realize how deeply their internal story controls their behavior. They think the struggle is the challenge in front of them, but the real struggle is the meaning they attach to it. If you fall short and the story you tell yourself is, "I never get it right," that becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. If you make a mistake and your identity whispers, "See, you're not capable," you start living down to that identity. You stop trying, you shrink. You choose smaller goals, safer dreams, easier paths. Not because you lack potential, but because you've been convinced by your own narrative that you're not the type of person who can rise. But the moment you change that story, even a little, the entire trajectory of your life shifts. Because you're not limited by your abilities. You're limited by the beliefs you use to interpret your abilities. And the powerful thing about beliefs is that they're not facts. They're choices. They're repeated thoughts. They're conclusions you made at some point when you didn't know any better. Most of them were formed in moments of fear, disappointment, embarrassment, or doubt. And without realizing it, you built an identity around them. The beautiful truth is that identity is not fixed. It's not cement. It's clay. You mold it every day with the decisions you make and the meaning you give your experiences. Every time you step up when you want to step back, you shift the story. Every time you try again when the easier choice is to quit, you rewrite the script. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you strengthen a new identity, one that's built on power, resilience, and possibility instead of fear and limitation. It starts with awareness. You begin to notice the automatic thoughts that surface when you fail, when you struggle, when you feel uncertain. Those thoughts reveal the identity you've been carrying. Maybe your internal story says you're someone who messes things up, someone who gets close but never makes it, someone who dreams bigger than they can achieve. But that story isn't truth, it's habit, and habits can be replaced. Identities can be rebuilt. Narratives can be redefined. When you shift your identity from someone who is shaped by circumstances to someone who shapes circumstances, everything changes. You stop reacting and start directing. You stop doubting and start deciding. You stop fearing who you're not. and start becoming who you are capable of being. But you can't wait for evidence to adopt a new identity. You can't wait for results to believe you're growing. Identity shifts happen before the evidence shows up, not after. You act like the person you want to become, and the results align with that version of you over time. Think about the people who inspire you, the ones who overcame impossible odds, who rose from nothing, who defied the expectations placed on them.